Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Jade and today I'm going to be talking about the books I read in 2023. So I'm not going to talk about every single book because that would take too long and I've already done reviews on all of these books. So if there's a book that you see that you want my opinions on, you need to go back and find those videos because I'm going to talk about my stats for the year, and then I broke down some categories, kind of like a tag video of like my favorite books, least favorite books, and I'm going to like talk about some of these books, but not all of them. So as far as how many books I read, Goodreads says 55. I've counted 53. And then on Storygraph, it says 50. So I don't know where it's off. I feel like what I counted is correct. I am missing one book that I read digitally. I'm thinking that on Goodreads, I might have counted a book twice or something. I'm a little confused why Goodreads thinks I read 55. But I counted 53 books. Towards the end of the year, I really wanted to make it to 60, and that just did not happen, which is fine. But I'm gonna go over my stats on Storygraph and I'll put them, I don't know, maybe somewhere on the screen. Storygraph's really interesting because you get to learn your like reading style, your pace, the genres that you like. Because you might, know that from the books that you read. Like, I know the genres that I prefer, but it's cool to like see it. And then like learning your reading pace, you can see the star ratings that you gave throughout the year. So I really like Storygraph, and you can link it to Goodreads. I really enjoyed that. I think I just want to be on top of Goodreads and Storygraph a little bit better this year because I learned about this pretty late in the year and trying to be a little bit more like on it this year. So as far as mood, like the moods of the books, dark is the largest part of my pie. It says I read like 37 in that category. And then it's intense, adventurous, and mysterious, and emotional. Those are my largest parts of the pie, which I'm not surprised. I like dark books. And then it was like hopeful. Like all of the like nicer moods are all like super tiny slivers. But yeah, I prefer dark moods in my books. As far as my reading speed, this one kind of surprised me, but I prefer a medium pace for a book. I thought it would be fast. So as far as pace, it has me at 74% of my books were medium paced, 22% were fast, and then just 4% were slow. So I definitely prefer a faster book to a slow-paced book, obviously, but I thought I would have more fast. I read mostly medium-paced books. For page number, 62% of the books that I read were 300 to almost 500 pages. 16% were 500 pages and above, and then only 22% were 300 pages and less. That one also kind of surprised me. I guess I read like pretty long books. Yeah, so I do, I guess, prefer longer books. The majority of the books that I read are 300 to almost 500 pages. Interesting. As far as fiction and nonfiction, it's 98% fiction and 2% nonfiction. I do want to work on that this year. I do want to read I want to have more nonfiction books in my like TBR for this year. I already have one, a part of my TBR for this year. As far as genres go, fantasy is the largest genre that I read. And then young adult, romance, dystopian, thriller, mystery, horror. Those are the largest parts of my graph. I'm not surprised that fantasy is first, and I do really love young adult. So I read 19 fantasy, 18 young adult, 14 romance, 13 dystopian, 11 thriller, 10 mystery, 9 horror, or that's like the value, I guess. I'm still learning Storygraph a little bit. Now this is the one that I think is incorrect because for format it has 70% print, 26% digital, and then 4% audio. I don't know how that's calculated because I don't remember putting in any formats. And I know that this is incorrect because I did not read 13 digital books. I think I read like three or four, something like that. It's much less than that. I prefer print. I prefer a print book over digital or audio, or what I've been doing lately is like tandem reading. So doing like both at the same time. But this is something I need to like learn how to, and this is input from Goodreads. So I need to learn on Goodreads how to like pick the format that I read the book. My most read author, I need to learn how to say this name, but it's the Shatter Me series author, and then Riley Sager, and then Sarah J. Maas, and then Holly Black. So those were my four most read authors. As far as star rating, I rated 18 books 5-star, 12 books 4-star, 1 book 3.5, 13 books 3 stars, and then 2 books I rated a 1-star. I rated a lot 5-star. I feel like I read a lot of really good books this year, but those are my stats. I kind of want to preface by saying that I am trying a new setup. I don't know if I like this yet, and it might be a little like the sound. I'm working on the sound. I bought a microphone and I need a cord and I can't find the cord that I need. So sorry about the audio still, but it's all a work in progress. Okay, so my first category are my top 5 books. Now these are books that I rated 5 stars. I would reread like 100%, recommend to people, and like the covers make me feel happy. Like when I see that book, it like makes me feel happy. That's how I picked these books, but it was really hard to only pick 5. I wanted to do 5, not 10, to really narrow it down. The first one being The Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This got me into reading this year. This is a super special book to me because I picked this up wanting to get into reading again. And it was this book that started my journey because I decided after this one, I'm gonna read 1 book a month. And that turned into a whole other thing to where I read way more than 1 book a month. So this book is so special to me. I love it so much. There's nothing in my mind, there's nothing wrong with any of these actually, but there's nothing wrong with this book. No flaw. I love it. I want to get this in another edition. This book is pretty well loved. The spine is cracked. I traveled, like this went in my purse with me everywhere, so I would like to get one that's like untouched, hasn't been worn, but this one's really, really special to me. Something I regret was writing on this book at the bottom. I wish I hadn't done that, but this was the first book of the year and I love it so much. So my first favorite book. So I debated, there's so many good books, but a book that was, I think, my second book that I read here is The Court of Mist and Fury. I will so read this again. I loved this book. It's the second book in this series. I think everyone loved this book. And something interesting is that I feel like people love this one. From what I've like just seen, they love this one more than the first. I prefer, well, like this one is like more special to me, but I like them the same amount. Like I don't feel like I had to get through the first to love the second. This one I even tried to tab with like little sticky notes before I bought like pretty tabs, and then just realized tabbing is just not my thing. But love this book. I think the series itself is really good, but the first 2 books are the best for sure. So this is my second pick. My third pick, I love this book so much. Like that is The Cool Prince. And this series, like this series is so good. And I love all 3 books. I love all 3. They're all so good. I think this book specifically, when I see this cover, it like makes me really happy and like kind of like, it like brings emotions out of me. Like it's such a good series, and I saw somewhere that they're gonna turn it into like a TV series, and I so hope, oh, and this one as well, like Court of Thorns and Roses, I hope they don't do that. I hope they don't turn any of these books into movies or TV series. Let's just leave them as books, please. A Court of Thorns and Roses is more like high fantasy, like we're in a different world, and there's like the land where the humans live, and then Fae, and one human is forced to go live with the Fae, and I think that's kind of a recurring theme in a lot of fantasy books, but she has to go live with a man who is Fae, and it kind of seems like Beauty and the Beast for a little while, but it is not. And it seems like a retelling. It's not a retelling. And it's very exciting. It's just so good. Now, The Cruel Prince is not high fantasy. There's like the human world, like our world, and then there's the land of the Fae with, you know, fairy, and our character Jude is taken from the human world to fairy, and because she has to go live with her stepfather because her sister is actually Fae, and that's where she belongs, and she's trying to survive in a fairy world. This one is more political. There's a lot of like pieces moving around for this one, and it's very exciting, and there's like family stuff, whereas this one is not nearly as political. It's high stakes, but like this one is higher stakes. So good. I have a student right now that's reading this, and I keep asking her like, okay, where are you in the book right now? Because I keep telling her like, keep reading because it's so good. My fourth pick is no surprise, and that is Fourth Wing. I loved this book, loved it so much. Again, 5 stars. There's nothing I disliked about this book. It's dragons and training and competitions and war and enemies to lovers. It's so good. Now, Iron Flame let me down. I think it let the world down, but I'm really hoping that the third one is better. But the first one is so good. I have it in another edition as well, but I think the first one like holds a special place in my heart because this is the one that I actually like opened up and read and like marked up, like I wrote notes in it and stuff. So love this book. I also hope they don't turn this into a movie or a series because I think they are. And my fifth pick, this was tough. This was a later read, but I really loved it. And that is Red Queen. This cover is beat up. I think I'm gonna buy this in the hardcover, like a different edition, but I loved this book. It's so good. This is YA. We're following Mare. She is a red, and there are reds and silvers. She has red blood, and they're the people that go to war. They're kind of like the slaves, the reds. And then you have the silvers. They have silver blood, and they have special powers. They can like bend fire, bend water. They can read minds. Like they're very powerful. They're like godlike. But we discover that she's not a red or a silver. She's somewhere in between, and she's even more powerful. It's a journey. This series is a journey. Now, I loved the first. The second one was okay. The third was good. I'm actually about to buy the fourth book tomorrow. But this one just really was special to me. The time that I read this, I don't know, this book just really stuck to me, and I really love it. And I also really hope they don't make this into a series. I'm gonna say that about like every book, but it's really cool. It's a really cool book. I love it a lot. So that's my fifth pick. My next category is scariest book, but I want to do scariest and grossest. Now, I don't really think I've read a book this year that was like terrifying, like super scary, but if I had to choose one, it's tough because there are two. I think they're tied, but I think this is my choice. It's The Haunting of Ashburn House. Darcy Coates, I mean, she writes horror. Not all of her books are super scary, but I think my vision like how I pictured certain things in this book, I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be so terrifying if like you were in this situation. It would be like super scary. So this would be my pick, I think. I love this book. This book was super good. The other option might be Gallows Hill. I don't know. I think it's this one though. But yeah, this one I think was the scariest book I read this year. But I plan to read books that are just like a little bit more scary this year. Yeah, so that's my pick for scariest book. It's a haunted house kind of situation. Our character Adrian has inherited a house that she inherited from her aunt when she died, and she needs a place to stay, so she's going to go live in this house, and it's haunted and it's very isolated. Darcy Coates does a really good job of making you feel like creeped out. But like furniture moves, you see things in the mirrors, there's like tapping outside. It's really, it's creepy, and I loved it. And I really like Darcy Coates books, so this I think would be my scariest pick. Now for grossest pick, that is definitely Tender is the Flesh. This book was so gross. I've gone back and forth with this book because I don't think that I liked it, but I'm keeping it because I read it, like I finished it. I mean, this book does make you feel things, and it's so visual and it's so disgusting, and I think the message within this book is good, but this is not a book I would recommend that you read. But yeah, so this would be, I mean, it was scary, but not like haunted kind of scary. This was just like people are gross and scary and awful. The next category are books that made me cry. There are three. There are three books that I read this year that made me cry. The first one being The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I really want to try more books by V.E. Schwab because her writing is beautiful. This is a pretty long book, and this is a slower paced book for sure. So I started reading this physically and decided to listen to the rest of the book, and I loved listening to this book. And this book, it made me cry. It was beautiful. So I'll just read like a little bit of the back. In a moment of desperation, a young woman named Adeline meets a dangerous stranger and makes a terrible mistake. It will be 300 years before she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and discovers someone who can remember her name, and suddenly everything changes. It's a really good book. It is a longer read, but I got all like emotional at the end of this book. I mean, there's a reason everyone loves this book. So that's the first book that made me cry. The second book that made me cry, I was so sad, and that was The Queen of Nothing. And it wasn't so much that like the story was sad, but the ending, like knowing that this book was over and like the series was over and I was gonna be leaving these characters, it made me cry. I got very emotional. It's like, oh my gosh, like this series was so good and it's over. And yeah, I loved this book so much. I loved all three, but yeah, so this is the next book that made me cry because I was sad to leave these characters and that the story was over. The next book that made me cry, and this is because the story was sad, is The Thing Between Us by Gus Monroe. This is a really sad book. This book is all about grief. Our main character, Tiago, lost his wife, and in the first chapter, we're at her funeral. So it's like really, really sad. I started reading this knowing it was a horror and that it was supposed to be sad, but when I started reading it, I started to get emotional and I had to put it down. I was like, oh my gosh, this story is so sad. So this one made me cry for different reasons than the other ones. Like the first one was beautiful and sad, but like in a beautiful way. The second one, I was just sad to be finished with it. And then this one was just like, this book was heavy. It's a very sad book. Basically, Tiago's His wife died and he got money from her death and he feels guilty about that. But he's just kind of very unlucky, and death follows him. Death has followed him his whole life, and things just keep going wrong for this guy. And it gets very fever dreamish, which was not my favorite part of the book. I don't like being super confused and not knowing what's real and what's like a dream. So this book does get very weird, but it is sad. So this one is my third pick for a books that made me cry. The next category is books that I didn't like or that like let me down. Books that disappointed me. And the first one is The Bone Keeper. I just didn't really care for the writing style of this one. I loved the cover and the story was interesting, but I feel like it's like we couldn't push past something to like get connected with the characters. And I also thought it would be a little bit more scary, so for that reason, this one kind of let me down. I just wasn't super fond of the writing, and I thought this was gonna be more scary. Insomnia. This one was also not scary, and we just kind of knew what was going on throughout the book. There wasn't like a big plot twist, so it wasn't really a horror or mystery. I don't know, this one just was not very exciting. It was not like a super interesting book, I guess. So this one let me down. Yeah, I just didn't super like this book. Nothing But Black and Teeth. I think I gave this 1 star. It was so bad. And the cover was so cool. I thought this was gonna be really creepy, like a short, creepy book. It was just like, what happened? What in the world is this book? This one let me down. The last one was A Dowry of Blood. I didn't really care for this book. I liked our main character and it was cool that it was like about Dracula, but the story I didn't like. It was an interesting book and I read it in like 2 days. It kept my attention, but there were things in the book that I didn't like, and it was also pretty dark. And I think I was expecting more from this book. I thought I would like it more than I did. This one disappointed me. It disappointed me. And I'm sorry, because I know that a lot of people love this book, but I just didn't really get on with it. The next category are books that I can't stop thinking about. Like, I put the book down and months later, I'll think of that book. Yeah. I have 3 books. There might be more. Like, I really love my books, but these books in particular, I think about a lot. And the first one being The Butterfly Garden. When I finished this book, I wasn't even sure if I liked it because I did not like the ending. I feel like I was cheated of a good ending. I didn't like it. But the story itself is so dark and creepy, and I don't know, this book, I think about this book a lot. It really interested me, but I ended up buying the physical copy. I read this digitally and wanted this in my collection, so I did buy it physically. In this book, the book is an investigation, like an interrogation between the FBI and a woman who was in this garden with the gardener and all of his butterflies. So he captures women between a certain like age, and like they're all beautiful women. He collects them. They're his butterflies, and he keeps them in a garden. And he tattoos large butterfly wings on their back. In this investigation, they're interrogating her to try to find out what happened to some of the women that were captured, because at this point, the women have escaped. We're trying to figure out what's happening or what happened, but she's a very difficult person, and she's not giving them the information right away, and they don't know if she was involved in the capture of the butterflies or not. So the story's like kind of dragged out because she doesn't want to just tell them stuff. But it was really good, except for the ending. I really didn't like the ending, but the rest of the story was good. The next book that I think about so often is The Cruel Prince. Like, just this whole series, I think about it a lot because I loved it so much. I think about this even more than other series. I don't know. This series just really stuck with me. I'm constantly thinking about this series. The third book, I think about this so much, and that is Scythe. This book is just so different and like so dark, and I don't know, the ideas that are in this book, I think it like really stuck with me. In Scythe, everything has been cured, every disease, no one goes hungry, everyone has jobs, like everything is perfect, it's a utopia. But people still have to die, you know, so that the earth doesn't get overpopulated. And that job goes to scythes. They are in charge of gleaning people. And they don't just choose at random, there's technology, there's like data that helps them narrow down who they're supposed to glean. And we're following, well, in the first book, we're following two apprentices. They're training to become a scythe, and we're following their journey. And it's very eerie, very dark. I liked the first book a lot. The second book, I liked. The third book, I DNF'd. So I don't know if I'm gonna go back to the third. We'll see. The next tag are books that I DNF'd. I think there are three. I think there's one that I forgot about. But the two that I DNF'd that I can remember is the third book in the Scythe series. I started it. I got a few chapters in and I'm just like, I don't like it. I don't like this book. So I did DNF that book. I also DNF'd The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. I was so excited about this book, and the story was interesting. It was creepy. I just don't think I like T. Kingfisher. I don't like her writing. Oh, I know which one I DNF'd. It was a Stephen King book. Oh my gosh, what was it called? It was Salem's Lot. Now, I've DNF'd maybe 4 Stephen King books just over the past few years because I cannot read Stephen King. But I tried Salem's Lot. I really tried with Salem's Lot. It is so boring. I did not like it. So that's the other one I was thinking of. But The Hollow Places, I got 100 and some pages into this. I was like, I can't. I don't like T. Kingfisher. And then, yeah, the Scythe book. I really hate to DNF a book. But if I DNF something, it's because I really dislike it. Because I pushed through some books that were just like, they're okay. But I'm trying to also be better with like, if I don't like a book, I just need to DNF it. Because there are too many good books to read to force myself to read something I don't like. The next tag is Biggest Surprise. The book that surprised me the most. I think the 2 books that were my biggest surprise was Final Girls by Riley Sager, because this was my first like horror thriller, and my eyes were open and I was like, oh my gosh, I really like this genre. And I was like, this cover looks good, people said they liked it, but when I read this I was like, what is this genre? And I realized that I really love thriller and I like the horror aspect. So this was a really big surprise, and this got me into reading all of Riley Sager's books. So I think this was my first big surprise. My other book that I read recently, actually, I think I read this in December, that surprised me was Champion of Fate. I thought it would be good. YA fantasy. This was really good, and it was very exciting. It was like knights and horses, magical like Amazons, fighting for glory, evil kings, you know, sisterhood. It was different to other YA fantasies because it wasn't fae, it wasn't super heavy on the magic. It was more like horses and knights, a little bit more fairy tale-esque, but not like so much princesses. It was like princes, and then our female knights. So this one surprised me. I had this for a long time, It was a new release this year and I really wanted to get to it. And when I finally read it, I thought it would be good. I did not expect to like it this much, and I'm very excited for the next one. So this one surprised me. The next tag are books with the prettiest cover. I think The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is a beautiful cover. And this is the paperback. There are like hardcovers that, there are a lot of editions of this book that are like super pretty, but I think this cover is beautiful. I already talked about this book, but this book has such a cool cover. Like, the cover is what drew me to this book. It's so, like, the design is so intriguing for this book. I think this cover is beautiful. And then I woke up, I love the pink. Like, I think this cover is so cool. This book was also super good, but I really love the design for this cover. And The Shadow of the Gods. Now, I don't know if this one could be considered a pretty cover, but just like the cover is so, it's so cool. Like this huge dragon. So I think those books have the coolest covers. Oh, wait. No. This one. Oh, Frankenstein. Look at, oh, this cover is beautiful. Those, I think, are the prettiest covers. A Court of Thorns and Roses I would also include because I think the cover just makes me happy, but look at this. Ugliest book. I think the Shatter Me series covers are so ugly. And people think they're really pretty. I don't like having a single eye on the cover. I don't think these covers are pretty. They're so like unappealing to me. I don't like it. It's like Cyclops or something. This series is just okay, honestly. Red Queen series, much better than this one. And they're like they're a little similar, like dystopian kind of books. That one was way better though. But I think all of the Shatter Me series books are ugly. The longest book that I read was Crush by Tracy Wolff. This series is it's so bad, but it's entertaining. But this book, I didn't realize it was this one. This is almost 700 pages, 680 pages. I thought it was gonna be Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Wings and Ruin. No, this one was longer. So this was the longest book that I read. However, the margins are pretty large for this book. So, I mean, it is chunky. This took, you know, it was a big book. And the shortest book that I read was The Yellow Wallpaper. I mean, this is a short story, but this is really good. The topic of this book, this little tiny story is like really good. So this is the shortest book that I read. Some of my other tags, I think, I don't know, favorite new author, I think Sarah J. Maas. I'm gonna read so many of her books. So I'd say Sarah J. Maas, definitely Riley Sager, and Darcy Coates. I think those three authors I could easily say, or like very confidently say, that I would read like all of their books. I really enjoyed Holly Black's books, but I don't know that I would read all of her series. But yeah, I think those three, Sarah J. Maas, Riley Sager, and Darcy Coates. And then I had another category of just like books that make me happy. Honestly, just all of my books make me happy. Like seeing these books, I love it. Like it's so funny to me that they can hold so much meaning to them. I'll come home like from work and I'll see my books and they just like make me relaxed, and I don't know, I love seeing my books. And I have them, sorry, this cover is bugging me. I love having them in my living room so I can, like, one of the first things that I see, other than Batsy, like Batsy always makes me so happy. But I love having them in my living room where I can see them all the time. I think they all make me happy. I'm very glad that I got into reading in 2023. this year was so fun. Like, this was such a fun reading year. I'm so glad to be back in a hobby that I loved when I was younger. And I'm going to continue to read and do reading videos this year in 2024. I'm already excited to talk about books that I read in this month in January, and I guess we'll see where this year leads. I don't have a 2024 TBR. I'm kind of doing it by month, but I am collecting books and putting them into piles of, like, at least for just February, of like maybe February and March, kind of what I would like to read in those months. But I will be making more videos. Please stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this like 2023 wrap up. Again, I didn't want to talk about every single book, but I just kind of wanted to break down into categories and kind of make it fun. But if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on these books, because there are so many good books that I did not talk about, then you can go back and watch my videos. And I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe, leave a comment down below, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching. If you have any questions for me, you can leave questions down below, or if you just want to say hi, leave like a book emoji or something like that. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.